So today we've got a very different kind of video. We're going to be talking about the future of the Mando-verse, some interesting things with Thrawn, Mount Tantiss, and looking at a very specific overlap that ties together many of the recent shows. This is a big one. This all starts with an interesting crossover, a story that concerns both Star Wars and Jurassic World. And you might be thinking, wait, Meg, what in the world are you talking about? Jurassic World? As you guys know, I only do Star Wars on this channel. I don't do wider pop culture, but as a fan, I do consume other media naturally, and sometimes there is a bit of overlap. If you've ever checked out my second channel, my music channel, Meg's Cantina, then you might be aware of the fact I'm a big fan of the Jurassic franchise. And this year, the big Jurassic release is Jurassic World Rebirth. The first trailer premiered a week ago, and fans are pretty excited, much more than they were for Jurassic World Dominion. And as you're probably aware, the director is Gareth Edwards, famous for Rogue One. He is such a big Star Wars fan, he tends to throw in Star Wars Easter eggs and references across his movies, the most recent example being The Creator, and I highly recommend it. But Jurassic World Rebirth does have an interesting crossover. The new dinosaur teased in the trailer is directly inspired by the Rancor from Return of the Jedi, and also the one from Book of Boba Fett. The Jurassic World Rebirth trailer was amazing. There has been some concern and criticism, especially after Dominion came out, that the Jurassic franchise is now void of ideas. But this new trailer had the internet buzzing because of one specific monster, the D-Rex, described as an accident that is supposed to exemplify cloning gone wrong and a freak of nature with 6 limbs. Based on what can be seen of it and its obscured alien sauropod proportions in the trailer, the Jurassic franchise is finally returning to its horror roots, and fans seem pretty chuffed. So, the Rebirth and Rogue One director Gareth Edwards opened up about it, and he admits, yes, some Rancor went in there, and it's like a crossover between Jurassic and Star Wars. So if you're a fan of Star Wars and you want a little bit of galaxy far, far away thrown into Jurassic, Rebirth might be right up your alley. I will say though, after this visual was shared online, the one you're seeing on your screen now, some fans were concerned that not only does it look rather blurgish and less Rancor-like, it doesn't have the kind of tougher bone structure that you'd expect from a Rancor. In terms of how Jurassic fans reacted, they said it looks like it's something out of Alien. I don't know if Gareth Edwards watched The Bad Batch, but in terms of the rounded dome and the mouth structure, doesn't it look a little bit like the baby Zillo Beast? Just a little bit. Nonetheless, this thing is enormous, and not to mention, it's super unsettling. You know, with today's capabilities of CG, and bringing this back to Star Wars because like I said, I am a Star Wars channel fundamentally, it makes me think of what they're going to do in upcoming Star Wars films. And in The Mandalorian and Grogu, I think there is a very solid chance we see Grogu riding the Mythosaur on Mandalore. Grogu has already connected with it, and I can imagine there being a climactic moment. It rises out of the water, and just like Ezra Bridger had a connection with certain creatures, Grogu can do the same thing, and he's the one who's going to ride it. And if the rumours are true that we might be going back to Tatooine, Sophie Thatcher, Drash from the mods did say we might see more of them in a future project. If we see Boba Fett, then hopefully we get more Rancor action, this time on the big screen. Judging from the D23 footage, which was very limited and only shown to those in the room, I did get to see it before it was taken down on social media, and I think the big focus is going to be on making Star Wars feel like an event, the grandiose special effects, and to a large extent when you're talking about Star Wars that does mean creature design. The landscapes making the planets feel beautiful the way George Lucas did, but also the monsters. And Jon Favreau actually explicitly expressed this after The Mandalorian Season 2 when he did an interview talking about the Krayt Dragon. He spoke about how Star Wars always had these amazing creature battles, and he wanted to bring some of that magic back. In Season 1, we saw Blurgs, Mudhorns, the Ravenak was amazing. In Season 2 we got Krayt Dragons, Ice Spiders, Mamacores, do you remember those? Those were the creatures on the moon of Trask. We saw some Caledonian monsters when Mando brought Grogu to Ahsoka, and across Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian's 3rd season, Jon Favreau kept his word. Sand beasts, huts, wart roosters, womp rats, the avian dinosaur thing, the lake monster, the mythosaur rancors. ILM have done a great job. Regardless how you feel about those projects, and I've been very critical of The Mandalorian Season 3, visually speaking these monsters have been pretty impressive. My favourite was the Krayt Dragon in Chapter 9. So for The Mandalorian and Grogu, just judging from the D23 teaser trailer, I really think they're going to do more, and this is something George Lucas was a master of. not just with the original trilogy where we saw the Wampa, the original Rancor at Jabba's palace, and some other classic original trilogy designs, but also in the prequel trilogy. Say what you will about dialogue in those movies, the world building was incredible. A great example in episode 1 would be the sea creatures like the Oppie Sea Killer or the Sando Aqua Monster, but my favourites came in Attack of the Clones at Petronarchy Arena on Geonosis. When I was a kid, I already loved the concept of dinosaurs, whether it was the movie Dinosaur or my introduction to the Jurassic franchise, which was number 3. You can imagine how when I saw Attack of the Clones, those two worlds, those two passions, Star Wars and Jurassic, really began to overlap. And you might say, well, they have nothing to do with each other. One is dinosaurs, and the others are creatures from a space fantasy franchise. But as a child, to me they were all just big exciting creatures, and I loved them. The ferocious Nexu, the crab-like, praying mantis-like Acklay, but my all-time favourite was the Reek, the massive bull-like beast. We've seen Nexus and Massives in other Star Wars projects. Don't you guys think it's about time they brought back the Reek in something? It's been mentioned in comics, in the Clone Wars, in the High Republic, but we haven't seen one in live action since Attack of the Clones. You know, for 2002, that CG blew my mind. So I think it's good that Jon Favreau wants to keep that aspect of Star Wars there, and not just for the imagination of children watching, but also for us adults. We always talk about lightsaber fights, but to my mind, creature battles are invigorating parts of the Star Wars universe. So the prospect of being sat in the cinema in 2026, with the best that Skywalker sound has to offer, the best visual effects that ILM can cook up, I think that's going to be blimming fun. And here's just a bit of speculation. Do you think, given the fact they recanonized Mount Tantiss in the Bad Batch, it might come into play later in the timeline in the Mando-verse? Because guess what creature is now on Wayland? A cloned Zillo beast. Are they going to do that blending of Star Wars legends and canon? Imagine the gigantic Zillo being used by Thrawn as a weapon, probably not in Jon Favreau's movie, but the one being helmed by Dave Filoni in just a few years' time. In 2021, I think it was, I laid out this massive video where I spoke about how the Mando-verse is kind of being structured around a mishmash of expanded universe content and Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau's own vision. And even though the Bad Batch is much earlier in the timeline, I think Lucasfilm just did something very deliberate. Canonizing Wayland, bringing back Mount Tantiss, which was very important in Heir to the Empire, not to mention the Empire abandoning it in the final season of the Bad Batch. So I have a hunch that's a plot point that's going to be re-explored, maybe in The Mandalorian. How exciting would that be? The Zillo Beast, maybe having to confront the Mythosaur. I'm just kind of spitballing a few ideas, but there's also been the suggestion that during the annexing of Mandalore, the Empire was responsible for initially waking the Mythosaur, almost mirroring the Republic's bombardment of Malastare. Sometimes, especially with some of the more recent Star Wars shows, it feels as though fans kind of move on very quickly, but I've not forgotten about the Bad Batch, and I've certainly not forgotten about Tantiss. Thrawn is very aware of and obsessed with the past, especially as someone who rose the ranks of the Empire. He's got access to a lot of their database, and now that he's back in the known galaxy, he might find out about and explore Dr. Hemlock's closed research facility. Hemlock might have died decades ago, but if Thrawn is curious and wants to learn about the secrets of the Zillo Beast, while Tantiss is deserted, I feel like Thrawn could put it back into commission. I just feel as though the Wayland subplot was a setup. And we know Project Necromancer is back, but in the case of the Mando era and then the sequels, it's Grand Admiral Sloane who succeeds, and not Thrawn. But Hemlock's research is alive well after his death. So as I say, more creature battles and maybe the resurgence of Mount Tantiss. What do you guys think? Share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. Do you enjoy these kinds of videos? Please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.